I'm Jamie S. Rich. I've been working in comics for 20 years. Join me as we dig a little deeper into how comic books are made and get to know the people who make them. This is From the Gutters. How many projects do you work on in general at a time?
I try and limit it to 2.
So like one for them, one for you?
Yeah, kind of thing. Or like one for them and like maybe like a freelance thing on the side just to make some money.
So you were working on, so you first transitioned out of mini comics to work with writers.
Right.
And American Virgin, was that the first time you'd been inked by somebody else? Wasn't it Ryan Kelly?
Ryan Kelly inked me for a few issues and Jim Rugg as well.
Right.
So, which is awesome because they're both
two
powerhouses.
great artists in general.
Yeah. Excuse me. I was working on a graphic novel at the time. I was doing East Coast Rising, so that was for Tokyo Pop. And then the schedule just got too crazy with a graphic novel and then a monthly series, and even as fast as I could draw, I couldn't get it out fast enough. So we decided to get inkers involved with American Virgin, and so which was great because everyone was awesome.
But was it hard to give up and say, let someone else ink me?
That wasn't hard because they're both really good. The hard part was the fact that I spent more time on the pencils now.
Because you want to impress them?
Because my pencils are so hard to read. Like, if I gave them my pencils, I would feel bad about it because they would be like, just some squiggly lines over here. It's like, oh, that's a tree. And I know how to read that for my inks, but like I would go in and draw what I wanted to see inked or what I felt like they needed to know. So I don't know if I saved any time by having an inker, but because I ended up noodling over the pencils a lot more.
And that was a lot of work too.
Oh, geez, yeah.
What was that, 24, 25 issues?
Yeah, 23 or 24.
Yeah. What was Steve Siegel like? I'm a huge Steve Siegel fan.
Steve Siegel is awesome. He's fabulous. He's hilarious. He's so not just like, in his emails, but whenever we hang out in person, he's really funny and he's super cool. And, I've been lucky to work with writers that are very much willing to make me part of the creative process as well. So, sometimes I hear people talk, if I'm talking with friends, it's like, oh, I'm working with this writer, and they don't, like, have any give, like, if I have an idea, they won't listen to it or something like that. So I've been really lucky as an artist to work with writers that will listen if I'm like, oh, I think maybe, this should happen here, or, like, what if I did this, or, let me take chances with the storytelling.
Yeah, my philosophy is as a writer is I get the art back and I don't pull out my script. I just look at the art.
Yeah.
And it's gotten me in trouble a couple of times where I didn't notice something, but the thing is, like, if I'm looking at the page and I can tell what's happening, I always say, just don't make me rewrite my dialogue because I have to fix something. But yeah, I don't understand the dictatorial writers. Have you found that? Have you run into those situations, like say on work for hire, where you're just like, I'm just like, being plugged in?
That's what you're being paid for, though.
Yeah.
Like when I've done work for hire, it's like you take the job because it pays really well. And comics is lovely, but it doesn't pay really well. So I took a job for a Range Rover a few years ago that was like had to be like on spec. Like the car was like to model, and like the characters in the comic were based on people in real life, and so I had to draw actors and. Halfway through the shoot, they're like, we recast this character. So I was at San Diego, like,
I remember I saw you at San Diego at Trickster, and you're like, it was like the first night, like, I have to go back to my room, I gotta draw.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Which every editor that ever sees this should now be like, I want to hire Becky Cloonan.
No, don't hire me, because I'll take too many. I'll take.
She'll go back to a hotel room and draw.
Yeah, no, that was a really frustrating job, but it paid really well, and it was really interesting. It was like It was for Range Rover China, so it was on like this. It was all in Chinese. I had to letter a comic in Chinese, and I don't know any Chinese at all. Not even a character.
They didn't have anybody. Did they give you then the script?
They gave me the script, but I had to like copy and paste it. But then I had to figure out like who was saying what and like match the names up, and it was pretty intense.
Do you do a lot of commercial work, or do you?
I do some. I don't do too much. I worked with the Aquabats recently. I did some animation for them like a few months ago.
For their TV show?
For their new TV show. That was cool.
And you're currently working on, what's the official title for the Killjoys?
The True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys.
Because I know there's the album, was it the album called?
Danger Days.
Danger Days, yeah. So that's why I get them mixed up. So the My Chemical Romance album was kind of the setup for this comic.
Yeah, but the comic was actually set up for the album.
Right.
Strangely enough, so they thought of the comic, and then that informed the album, which informed the music videos, which has gone back to inform the comic.
Because you did the spider symbol on the album cover.
Yeah. Now it's like everywhere. I can't get away from it.
So you're in the midst of that now.
Yeah.
And that's Gerard Way and there's
Sean Simon.
Yep.
Co-writing it. They're great. They're both really good. And again, lucky to work with writers that, if I'm like, hey, what if we did this here? They're like, cool, do it,
What's your process then for working then down the line, like with colorists? Do you collaborate much with them, or do you just turn in?
I think with Killjoys, there's 1 billion characters, and each character has like 1 billion colors on them. So there's a lot. That's 2 billion colors. No, that's more than 2 billion colors. There's a lot of colors in this comic. It's very colorful, and it's difficult because we've been working on it for so long. I mean, even before this, I think I was brought on in like 2009 to the project, and it didn't even start until now. So we've been thinking about it for a long time. So it's definitely, there's a lot of back and forth that goes on like what we thought would be the colors. I make notes if I think something should be a certain, or in my head I see it as a certain color.
So who's the colorist on Fabulous Killjoys?
Dan Jackson.
He's a local guy. I worked with him at Dark Horse. He was on staff, so.
He's great. He's really good. I sometimes feel like a jerk because I'm like, am I asking too much to change things? And sometimes it's easier for me to like he'll send me colors. And as an artist, sometimes I like, I'll see it in my head and I'll be able to, I can just change that in Photoshop and know exactly what instead of having to like type all this stuff out. So sometimes I'll bring his pages into Photoshop and just like do a really quick, like maybe this will be like this color instead, or like maybe like take the levels down a little bit or something. And then I send it back and I'm like, I'm being such an asshole here because I'm just like, I don't know not when to stop, but like when is it me being helpful and me being like a total jerk,
I'd say you're probably fine because you probably have a sense of when you would not be happy. So
I'm never happy.
But I mean, if someone was doing that to you,
all the time.
if the client was coming back or the editor or whoever, and like, no, it needs to be exactly like this.
Oh yeah, no, I don't have I don't care if it's exactly. I just do things that like maybe something like this. Like if it's if we're talking like I'm talking to Sean or Gerard and they're like, well maybe Becky you can do something like. So I try to, I guess, show that without, but then I'm walking this line, like, where do I be a jerk or not be a jerk? Or what am I, like, am I going too far? Am I crazy? Should I just be typing this out by hand? And,
So that's when you rush back and do your mini comics.
Yeah, and just put it all, I'm a jerk.
So you're now an Eisner nominated, though, creator, because you got nominated for the Mire.
Yes.
Best single issue?
Best single issue.
Is that your first Eisner nomination?
No,
or?
I've had 7.
7? Yeah.
I've had 7.
I had none, so like it's all right.
No, it's good. I mean, it's cool. I've got used to not winning.
So, what do you think is the compulsion, though, to tell your own stories? Like, what's in you? Is there something in you that needs to come out?
Yeah, I think there's definitely with the mini comics, it's definitely trying to tell I have an idea for a theme that I want to touch on, or like a show, like a vignette of something, or like a scene that I want to really draw. Or characters that I'd like to explore, like from a larger story where I take like the idea of this character and I'll like pull them out and like, because I've got my epics in my head that I want to do, like my 30 volume, like, I don't want to give it away.
No, yeah, don't.
But there's definitely something in there where when I'm drawing for myself and when I'm writing my own stories, I'll like have dreams about my characters, or like I draw them in my sketchbooks, or like I imagine conversations between them in my head. And it's like the best feeling, when you go to sleep and you have a dream about your characters and you wake up and you're like, that was awesome. Like that, I love the comics I work on, I love Demo and I love working on the Killjoys and, but they don't invigorate me like working on something that I've thought of.
I think you can tell often, I haven't necessarily noticed it in your work art-wise, but like I said, even seeing how the writing changes, but yeah, that idea that like you're just doing it for yourself does
it's
automatically
very visceral.
change.
And there is like a certain personal element to it also, where it's like you're informed by the things that have happened to you that, even if it's not about those things, but there's, you can express yourself in a way because you're writing it also that you wouldn't necessarily be able to working off a script.
So what's the process for you? Do you start sketching and things emerge, or do you do like literal outline writing?
I try and do it differently each time because they're mini comics. So that's kind of the, to see if I'm going to start writing more seriously for myself, to try and like, for Demeter, I wrote a full script first. And that was the first time I've ever like written a full script for myself, because usually I'll just be like notes and, I'll draw these thumbnails and then I'll forget what was that little squiggle? So
I would assume your process with a writer is you get it and you start sketching out.
My process with the writer is all very similar. You get the scripts, break it down, you know, where's the beats, what's the most important things to happen on each page, and then do you know, think about the thumbnails, figure out where your page turns are, all this kind of stuff. And that goes also into the mini comics. It's the same thing. But with that, it's definitely like, it changes a lot more. You know, I don't stick to my script, and I don't necessarily stick to my thumbnails. There's a lot more like experimenting that goes along, and like rethinking things. You know, with Demeter, the one I was working on now, it's off to the printer, thank God. I rewrote it like 5 or 6 times, like the whole script was just rewritten. I changed it around completely from the first time I envisioned it. So there's a lot of changing that happens, a lot of switching around.
And you from what I gather, like following you on Twitter and stuff, that you listen to a lot of music when you're working. Mm-hmm. You pick stuff, I guess, to fit the mood. And
yeah, definitely.
But a lot of Norwegian and European heavy metal.
Yeah, I like, actually, a lot of the stuff I like now is like kind of the folk metal, like the more ambient, you know. I like Winter Philith, and I like Wardruna and Agalach, and like there's some like ridiculous bands coming out right now. They're just, if you guys watch, if you've seen the Vikings show, Wardruna's in some of the soundtrack, and it's like, they just came out with a new album called Yggdrasil, and it's so good.
Is that
it's really
the
good.
Tree?
Yeah, it's the world.
Asgard?
It's the world tree.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Thor, so like the whole Thor thing.
Well,
have you ever drawn Thor?
I have actually in Bendis's the Avengers, the number 100.
Oh, okay.
We had like all those different, like he had a book with like a ton of artists working on.
Because you did that Submariner story.
I did
for
a Submariner for Strange Tales, but I did 1 page of Thor versus Doctor Strange. And I was like, I'm going to draw the hottest Thor ever. And then I'm like, I'm going to draw the hottest Doctor Strange ever. And then they had a battle of hotness, extended in a giant electrical explosion.
Because you keep drawing all these shirtless guys. Submariner, Conan.
Yeah.
Guys that don't own shirts.
I'm into it. What can I say?
Exactly. So
it's for the ladies.
So that's the real secret
ladies.
for when a writer wants you to draw their comic. It's like, by the way, it's full of shirtless dudes with great abs.
Right now people are asking me to draw their comics because they think it'll be really sexy.
So, all right.
I've gotten a few. Hey, you want to draw this comic? It's really sexy. I'm like, well, you know.
When we're done, I've got some ideas. So you draw constantly. Do you ever? What else do you do? Do you ever get out of the house? Do you go to concerts?
I have a studio space.
But like, what do you do in your free time? I guess.
Play Skyrim. No, I don't do too much. Since I moved to Montreal, I've only gone to see 2 shows. My buddies are in a band called Heliotropes from Brooklyn, and they're incredible. They're like a kind of all chick Sabbathy kind of band.
Wow.
And then Mindless Self-Indulgence played a few weeks, like last week in Montreal, so I went out and saw them.
There's no like outside hobby. You don't knit or?
No, I don't knit. I like to cook. I mean, it's really domestic. You know, I'm like, oh, what can I fix around the house? I don't, you know, go out. I like shopping for records. You know, I like going to the comic store. Obviously. I've mellowed out a lot in my old age. I can't go out like twice a week like I used to, and like go see bands all the time, and you know.
It comes back around when you get a little older. You can
Maybe I will. Maybe I will. You know, though, I gotta say, Montreal, the metal scene is not that great, and I haven't found out if there's like a really great punk scene here, but in Montreal, but I don't even have a local bar yet, and I've been there since like July. You know. I've been to a few bars that I kind of like, but I don't have one that I'm there all the time that I'm like, bring me my usual, you know.